Well, very good morning to you all. Very nice to see you here. A big, um, a big thank you to Erica for, well, and everybody who's put this tremendous conference on. It's been yesterday and today has been extremely stimulating, very stimulating, quite challenging. I think we should be challenged, and certainly enlightening. Following what we've heard this morning, I was trying to work out how to put in context the next talk, which is going to be on the Antahkarana, which, if you like, you can think of it as even as bridge consciousness. It's an element of our psychological nature, which we should try to understand because it relates to the previous talk on genius. And it's not very well understood. And the way that we're going to tackle it today is largely by using the voice of the silence, which many of you will be aware of. Now, the first predicate is that, as someone said very nicely yesterday, the world is in a bit of a mess. And in the Secret Doctrine, we're given the idea that wisdom leads to happiness. And from that, we can probably deduce that we haven't quite reached the pinnacle of wisdom in our great, advanced, wonderful society that we live in. Someone's trying to come in. So, how do we put this into context? Well, one way that we've been discussing at the Lodge of the United Lodge of Theosophists is we're only a mile or so north of here, just the other side of Hyde Park. And every Wednesday we have a study of the way of the Bodhisattva. I think it's a 9th century Buddhist text. And during those studies, we realized that in the Buddhist tradition, the great reconciliation comes about through uniting two streams of Buddhist thought, the compassion stream and the wisdom stream. The first is the Yogacarya stream, and the second, the Madhyamika. And we won't show it on the screen today, but there's a wonderful picture of Tsongkhapa, the great 13th century reformer of Tibetan Buddhism, who was a powerful debater, aged about 17 or 18. He'd been around all the different universities and monasteries in Tibet, and he'd mastered all the different Tibetan offshoots. And he was able to debate with them. And through the power of debate, he was able to unify Tibetan Buddhism. And in this wonderful picture that we often share at the lodge is a picture of Tsongkhapa in the middle. In the middle of his chest is the Buddha. And coming into his chest or heart are two streams. And the two streams are the Madhyamika, the stream of wisdom, which is essentially the intellect stream, the stream of divine knowledge and sublime wisdom. And coming in on the other side is the compassion stream, which is the Yogacarya teaching. And they meet in his heart, and above him are the what looks very much like the Guru Parampara chain of endless hierarchies of what was mentioned by the first speaker, the Dhyanis, Bodhisattvas, dragons of wisdom, the titans. I mean, they come in every level and degree of the hierarchies. And under Tsongkhapa, we had all the disciples, chelas, adepts, the lower initiates, and this whole pantheon was described in this single picture. It's available on the ULT website. We can share it with you later. So that really is part of the context. Now, the Antahkarana, this sevenfold bridge of enlightenment, needs to be thought about before we begin. What it is, it's a bridge between the higher and lower mind. It's like Jacob's ladder in a sense that consists of coming up and going down of impressions. So we're going to approach this from the psychological perspective, this talk, and try and understand, firstly, the purpose of enlightenment in the esoteric sense. And then this facilitating bridge, which is the method of the Masters of Wisdom that's given in the Voice of the Silence, which is their manual for mystic development. Now, the first slide that we're going to, well, I should just preface this. Now, the purpose of a bridge is to transfer consciousness. Now, we all have our own bridge. Yesterday, we were given a wonderful transport into the mind of Socrates. Is it we were transported across the bridge. For a brief moment, we were there with Socrates. Now that's requires two things. It requires a factual understanding of Socrates' teachings. And then it requires a collaborative approach. And so what I'd like to do today is suggest that we adopt those two positions of trying to be factual and also collaborative, which in a way is a mirror of the wisdom and the compassion stream. And so during the talk, what we would like to do is invite some of you to participate in the meeting. And one way we can do that is by sharing readings. So we'd like to start off with these verses from the final chapter of the Tao Te Ching and invite one of you to read. This is chapter 81, which has got lots of paradox and poetry. The paradox is something we'll come back to later in the talk, and the poetry is self-evident. So would someone like to read? Perhaps we can go around the room, whoever would like to read. Yes, you may need the microphone.
There he is. Okay. Okay. Well, I'll stand up for this. Sincere words are not sweet. Sweet words are not sincere. Good men are not argumentative. The argumentative are not good. The wise are not erudite, and the erudite are not wise. The sage does not take to hoarding. The more he lives for others, the fuller is his life. The more he gives, the more he abounds. The way of heaven is to benefit, not to harm. The way of the sage is to do his duty, not to strive with anyone.
Thank you very much. there's a lot in this. Sincere words are not sweet. We like sweet words because they're comforting. They're not particularly helpful. Blavatsky wasn't described often as a sweet person. But she had something that we need today, which is wisdom and compassion. Now, the problem of that we alluded to at the beginning, Tsongkhapa was a great debater. We need debate. We don't need argument. Now, what's the difference? The difference is very important. I think it begins with what we try to do at the Lodge, which is to create sympathy and understanding. Sympathy and understanding are prerequisites to what may or may not come later, which is agreement of doctrine. Agreement of doctrine is never asked for. It could be never said, you have to agree with what I write. You said, take it as a mathematical hypothesis, test it. If it agrees with you and your experience, then that's fine. You can either accept it or you can look for something else. So this is probably the right way to do these things. We are dangerously close to becoming dogmatic if we take a different approach, which is, as Eddie pointed out in his first talk, you don't mimic someone, you use their wisdom and you try to pass on that wisdom, try to embody it in the heart and the mind, and then everything else begins to make sense. Now, as we're running a bit short of time, there is another slide here which gives three different, very brief quotations from the same, or translations from the same chapter. Well, perhaps we'll just read the first one of those. Would someone else like to read? Yeah.
Words are simple, not beautiful. The good cultivate the Tao, not the arts. The wise know the Tao, not information. The sage accumulates virtue, not wealth. He gives the wealth to the poor and uses his virtue to teach the unwise.
Thank you very much. And that's again, well, let's say, was one of the masters. I mean, HPB gives us that.
Because he's here combining the heaven of earth with the wisdom of the compassion streams.
And his role at that particular time in Chinese history was to revive the ancient wisdom that was already existing in Chinese society and folklore. And with Confucius together, they revivified the perennial wisdom in China. Now, Lao Tse, as we said, was a master of this esoteric arhat school, the Trans-Himalayan school of the masters, which HPB studied with in Tibet. Now, at the beginning of the voice of the science, in the first 2 pages of the preface, she tells us about this psychological training, which those who are convinced of her methods and efficacy and message may voluntarily try to follow. And in the lodge, we study the voice a lot. So would someone else like to read? Well, perhaps Jack. Yeah.
It is well known that in India, the method of psychic development differs from the guru, the teacher or master.
not only because of their belonging to different schools of philosophy, of which there are six, but because every guru has his own system, which he generally keeps very secrets. But beyond the Himalaya, the method in the esoteric school does not differ unless the guru is simply a lama, but little more learned than those he teaches.
Yeah, thank you very much. Now, this is very clear. We're being told that there is a plethora of systems, psychic development, initiation, and we see that in all the religions. All the mystic side of religions have a process of training of disciples, initiating them. But HPV says, well, actually, there is a system that predates these branches of the central trunk. And that is the one which is universal and unchanging, and the one that was going to be given in the exposition of the voice. So that's an important consideration. So this voice isn't just another system. What she's suggesting to us is that this is the master's training which they give to cheddars. And it's not an ad hoc one that someone's dreamed up and is his particular favorite variety. That's not how the masters work. The masters work in a very collaborative way. We're given that in many different writings of HPB, that everything is checked, tested, and verified by countless generations of sages who have used independent visions to confirm that they're still on the right track. In other words, they're not, there isn't a one guru system and he's the boss and everybody else is following his tune, which is sort of despotism, really, in a spiritual form. So this is quite different. This is much like our modern academics. They use peer review, they debate, they have conferences, and they argue about, well, perhaps argument is the wrong thing, because argument is slightly prejudicial, but they refine their understanding through Platonic dialectics. Dialogue. Yeah. Now, the next part, I think we've been talking about masters, so let's just think about a little of what the ultimate, we're going to perhaps take it back to front and start with the ultimate stage of enlightenment. And there's a wonderful message from Master Moria in the letters, the Mahatmas, that describes the final initiation of K. This is very important. We're not given much on this type of inner workings of the Mahatmas. So perhaps someone would like to read this. We'll take it in two parts. So this is Moria writing, I think it's to Stinnett, who was mentioned yesterday. Would someone like to read? Gina? Yeah, thank you.
A few days before leaving us, Kutumi, speaking of you, said to me as follows: I feel tired and very and weary of this never-ending disputation. The more I try to explain to both of them the circumstances that control us and in some causes between us to many obstacles to free intercourse, the less they understand me. Under the most favorable aspect, this understanding must always be unsatisfactory. Yes, aspirantly. So at times, nothing short of personal interviews at which there shall be discussion and the instant solution of intellectual difficulties as they arise would satisfy very fully. It is as though we were allowing to each other across an impassable moving. If only one pass being his interlocutor. In point of fact, there is nowhere in physical nature mountain abyss so hopelessly impossible and obstructive to the traveler as that spiritual, which keeps them back from me. Sorry.
Thank you very much. Well read. Thank you, Dean. Now, there's quite a lot in this. So I think this is written to Sinnett, probably Sinnett and Hume, and they were bombarding Kutumi with rather sort of impudent requests to meet him and to have one-to-one instruction, and to sort of skip to the front of the queue of presumably a long list of very worthy Indian Chevas. And he said, well, actually, there's an abyss between us. It's simply not possible to meet their demands and to instantly satisfy their curiosity. So, what's the solution to this? Well, perhaps Sarah would like to read.
Will you watch all of my work? Will you see the thoughts not into a plan? I promise. But there I would not have gone as an army. At a certain spot, not to be mentioned for outsiders, there is stand by a bigger beach of common races, and with a raging foreign wind. The bravest member of your Alpine flock was sitting there at the range with the passage, with the parents as private stuff, and seeks to be open and incompetent. Yet it is not, and people there will try and succeed. As we look into this way, that we should pass into a knowledge of surprising beauty of ceremony, the one of our race and the son of our people, of which there is no more or living among European geography. The stones brought of the old Ramadan strength, the old power, is in whose bosom have dedicated generation of Bodhisattva. It is there we can now rest your life and strength, my heaven, the heart of my soul. The wind made a faithful ground, the first during the absence over the world.
Thank you very much. So this was Kutumi. Would they, as I understand it, the final initiation consists of a period, quite a long period, of travel inside the mind, and the body is laid out, it doesn't move for weeks. There's no life apparently in the body, and this mind is freed to go and touch the garment of the hem of the garment of divinity, if you like to put it that way. It's very mysterious. So that is the ultimate enlightenment. Well, if we can call it ultimate, he's come to the seventh stage of the path. Now, enlightenment has that definite purpose. It has a compassion element, and the sevenfold Antahkarana is given in this fragment of the voice. Well, perhaps Tim would like to read.
I'll read. Yes, thank you. And the Lord thy head and listen well and what is happening. And Passion speaks and said, "When there be bliss, and all that lives must suffer, shall thou be saved, and hear the whole world cry. But thou hast heard, that is the step. Thou shalt attain the seventh skill, lost the gate of final knowledge, only to wed world. Thou wouldst be Pakistan, although upon thy predecessor's steps, remain unselfish till the endless mean. Thou art enlightened in thy way."
Lovely. So this is right at the very end of the voice of the silence, the third fragment, when the initiated candidate has been through all the different processes, and he's then given the choice. And the choice is really between accepting nirvana or rejecting it, to become a Nirmanakaya or Parsi Buddha, Pratyeka Buddha. And of course, the choice is a free choice. There's no compulsion. Now, the next part is the very last page of the voice, and it's one of integration. Enlightenment comes across here beautifully as an integral process in which one is for all and all of nature is for one. Perhaps Alan would like to read.
In terms of praise for the heaven and earth unite. In the fourfold manifested smells, the chanted love rise. There from the burning fire, burning water. And he stood standing out and watching you. Ah, from the deep unfathomable vortex of that burning light, the rich predicted days, all nature's worthless voice in thousands turns the rise of the day. Joy and beauty are men of my altar, have held. The pilgrim have returned back from the other shore, and you are our Saviour's Lord. Peace to all beings.
Thank you very much. Now, why did we begin at the end of the process? Somewhat unconventional place to start. One of the reasons is that, as was mentioned in the first talk, the cycle of rounds and races will lead all of us to this state of bodhisattva attainment. Every human will achieve that in the seventh round, seventh race, unless they drop out. And many will drop out. But that dropping is not casting into the inferno and forever lost. In the next Manvantara, they'll come back with another chance. So the recycling of nature is infinite. It's constant. There's no beginning and no end. But what we do know is that if we stay the course, and the moment of choice is in the sixth round, the sixth root rest, then we will become bodhisattvas, all of humanity, together. No one left behind. So it's our duty and responsibility to consider this as our evolutionary journey. As was said in many talks yesterday and today, we're spiritual beings incarnating on the muddy old earth, but for very definite and good and helpful purposes. So this is enlightenment. Now, in terms of the Antahkarana, or Antahkarana is sometimes called, it's a bridge. This is a rather simple drawing of a bridge, but it has three important architectural features. If you're an engineer, you may cast a critical eye on this bridge, but it's a symbolic bridge. The three elements really are the bridge itself, the keystone, and the foundation stones. The foundation stones, if you can think of it, are love and truth. There's no religion higher than truth. Tsongkhapa debated with love to get at truth. This is important. Truth is painful because it requires us to, like the serpent, shed our skin and break out of our chrysalis, whatever metaphor you want to use. Now, the keystone, the bridge can't stand. The keystone is something that holds an architectural structure together. Without it, the thing collapses. The keystone is knowledge or proven wisdom. This is what we've been given in theosophy. It's the perennial wisdom. It's not an invention of HPB. She never could have invented. No one could have invented what she did. And by the way, what she gave in 2 volumes of The Secret Doctrine and some of the other writings, she said is only a tiny fraction of the whole philosophy. But The Secret Doctrine itself is monumental work. So this, this idea, we need knowledge, love, and truth. And that is a bridge. And the bridge is something which is an internal organ. HPV says it's part of the astral man. And we'll come to that later. Astral in the generic sense, not the linga serera, which is the double body, the prototype, the doppelganger. It's astral in the sense that it's not fully spiritual. But that bridge is something which is constructed through our consciousness. And it was said that concentration, to achieve realization, you must develop power of concentration. This was said yesterday with regard to Newton. He said he dwelt on a particular thought for weeks. That's concentration. Diffuseness is the opposite. It's running into your mind every unconstrained psychic impression. Impressions are psychic, also. We live in an ocean of psychic impression. Anyone who's the least bit sensitive will understand that. Concentration is the opposite of that. And that bridge is something that's built through concentration. And we'll, if we have time, we'll perhaps develop that a little bit further later. Now, the Antahkarana, that is the real aim of this short talk. There's some very good selections here from the glossary. I think we won't read, we'll just read the first 2 paragraphs on this page, not the last one. Perhaps Janet would like to read.
In Antahkarana, according to Bodhidharma, the forever one universe exists, now it various humans, with crippled with every student philosophy. The opposite is explained as the pathway bridge between the higher and the lower manners, the divine ego and the personal soul of man. It serves as a medium communication between the two, and conveys from the lower to the higher people, all those personal impressions and thoughts in mind, can by their nature be assimilated in spirit by the underlying entity, and be thus made in the
Thank you. Yeah, the undying entity. That's right. So this is our higher ego, who we really are. The lower personality is something of a vehicle for the ego, which has to be trained. As was said yesterday, there's lots of methods of training. Silence, reflection, meditation, introspection, self-analysis. All those are critical things. They allow this Antahkaranic bridge of communication to inform us. It's the voice of conscience, the Antahkarana. It's what prompts us to the higher life. You should listen to it very carefully. It's not the whisperings of the deluded psyche, and I think we all understand the concept of a deluded psyche because none of us are free from delusion. So we have these little voices that come to us and warn us about things. That's not necessarily the voice of conscience. HPB says there is no infallible intuition. So we have to test our intuition just as we, in our own internal dialogue, we test what other people say to us. But nevertheless, as you progressively construct a bridge, the Jacob's ladder, if you like, becomes more alive and one's intuition becomes more reliable. It's never infallible. Now, in the Christian tradition, we have John the Baptist, who says, I am the voice of one crying in the wilderness. Make straight the way of the Lord, said the prophet. How do you pronounce it? Isaiah. Yeah, thank you. Now, in the one of HPB's articles, the esoteric side of the gospel gives this meaning, make straight the way of the Lord. HPB explains that as being purifying the Antahkarana. Make straight the way of the Lord, because the Lord is within. Purify the Antahkarana, the path that leads from the lower to the higher man. It needs to be straightened and unobstructed. It's the connecting link between the man of matter and the Lord within, sometimes also called Ishvara. Now, Ishvara is a complicated concept for those who perhaps haven't studied Hindu philosophy. One symbol that helps us with this is the blank circle and then the point in the middle of it. Thou art that. We are that. That is the point. Now the blank circle is the zero without the point. The zero has infinite force in potentia, in potential. What's important about this is that the blankness which we fear, which some people call death, is not a blankness at all. It is to the personality. The personality will die with the body, possibly survive in the Kamarupa, but it will not go on after the second death. And in a sense, that is its purpose and function fulfilled. We are not the personality. We will live on eternally. Now, that Ishvara is that essence of ourself which informs and illuminates the mind. It's the mind of genius. It's the mind which we will all ultimately attain at some point. So that symbol is very helpful. You can meditate on that and liberate oneself from the personal consciousness that way. The point in the circle is either the individuality or the cosmos waiting to come into manifestation. Now, the process is one of learning. Life is learning. Learning can be symbolized by the lotus as a flowing wheel. The lotus is the symbol of cyclic eternity. It's used, we just had White Lotus Day last month, which is something HPB suggested that we could use to remember her work. If that lotus was rotating, and everything in life rotates, we go through an endless cycle of trials. If you start at the bottom right-hand side, the trials and tests of life are endless. It leads to realization and learning through introspection. If we don't introspect, we don't learn, and we are on the hamster wheel without learning, which is a tragedy. The realization leads to some form of therapeutic process. We heal ourselves through realization. And using the strength of that therapy, of that integration, we are able to face life's trials and continue going round the wheel. And that's the beneficial spiral of human evolution. And the lotus is a lovely symbol. Its bud grows out of the mud. Its stem pierces the astral domain of the water. Through there, it pierces up into the surface, and the surface is where it blooms and comes into the sun. And that's a metaphor of why perhaps the lotus is so powerful. It's the perfect analogy of enlightenment.